Well, hey everybody, it's Casey J. Cox with the Quarterback Dadcast. We're getting towards this tail end of season 5, and it's been a fantastic fantastic year of just some amazing dads. And our next gentleman is a younger dad, which I'm excited to sharpen my dad skills from this gentleman because I think he's going to bring a lot of wisdom. He's going to bring a lot of experience, and this episode only happens by the fantastic JP Justin Priest from ConsultNet. He made this introduction, former podcast Dadcast guest himself. But our guest today is Colin Rocker, and he's an influencer. He's a speaker. He's a coach. He's a marketing extraordinary. He's got consulting experience. He's a Georgia Bulldog.
That's right.
All you Bulldogs out there. He goes by Career Colin. We're going to learn all about that. But more importantly, we're here to talk to Colin the dad. And we're going to learn how Colin's working hard to become the ultimate quarterback or leader of his household. So without further ado, Mr. Rocker, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Thank you so much, Casey. I'm glad to be here.
It's going to be fun. Well, we always start out each episode with gratitude. So tell me, what are you most grateful for as a dad today?
Today and every day, I'm most grateful for my wife, I would say. She's definitely, I heard this quote by Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, and he says that like being a dad is kind of like being like the backup quarterback, right? Like you're on the team, but when they put you in the game, there's a little bit of hesitation, right? You're good for a couple plays, but no, she's really kind, she's really patient. Just loved her whole approach to things. She's taught me a lot just in terms of my journey as a parent. But specific to me, I would say I'm definitely grateful for my youth. My dad was definitely on the older side. I was the third kid of his 2 of 3 marriages, and so like I definitely noticed, compared to obviously the other dads, right? Like there's a level of just physical capacity there, right? That I think I'll be able to definitely provide for my son that maybe I didn't get when I was a kid. So definitely grateful for that.
There we go. Well, I am grateful for. I was joking with this before we started recording, but I'm gonna be grateful for this. I'm grateful for Snapchat because everybody, when someone when I got asked to get on Snapchat, I'm like, come on, I'm like 48 years old. I don't get on Snapchat for. I'm too old for that stuff. But with a son in college, I now have, I think, 57 straight days.
Yeah,
57 straight day of a snap streak. I think what the kids are calling it, Colin.
Absolutely.
57 days in a row. And I mean, I would have never done this, but I met my son where he's at. And now my son responds to me, and he actually sends me pictures. He'll send me something each day. Hey, on the way to school, boom. And it's just that's how I communicate with him. And I guess I'm quote unquote a cool dad now with him. But I just love that. I opened my mind to try something new, but I'm grateful for it. It allows me to kind of stay connected with my son, who's in college as a freshman, which was a really, really hard thing to go through.
Yes.
But so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my son teaching me how to use Snapchat.
That's awesome. I'd love to see a picture of you with the dog filter, like some of that. I'm sure they're crazy now. When I was using it, it was the dog filter that was all the rage. But I'm sure the filters are pretty crazy these days.
Well, there's one that was like a French artist, and so I did a video and I sent it to my buddy who's like a couple years older than me on the East Coast, and I was like, what I say? I was like, "Bonjour, do you have any French bread?" And we did this, like, we were just like laughing and being complete idiots. But anyway, I digress. But all right, enough of the shenanigans with Snapchat. Colin, bring me inside the Rocker huddle and tell me who is on the squad, and tell me who's inside your family huddle.
I love that. So yeah, we're a small and mighty team these days. Obviously it's me and my wife. We're in Manhattan. We both moved there. We're both born and raised in Georgia. Met in college. Moved to New York City kind of to start our careers and start a family together, unknowing to us. And then we've got our baby boy Isaiah Clark Rocker, actually. The middle name Clark is a funny story because we chose that because we met in Athens, Clark County. That's where UGA is based, and so we chose that as sort of the meeting point of us and sort of the beginning of what would become obviously the family that he was welcomed into. And then he's 4 months old, and then we've got we recently brought a nanny onto the squad, I guess you can say, which is really, really nice because we definitely needed it to help give us some time to sort of get back into the swing of our careers and such.
Love it. As a new dad, when you left the hospital, they didn't give you the manual. At least they didn't give me a manual when I left.
Not at all. No.
Tell me what's been the hardest part so far?
I mean, the hardest part has been kind of changing my view of fatherhood, especially in the context of like a big city with the age I'm at. Right, I'm living in Manhattan. I'm 28 years old. Right, I found out I was having the baby when I was 27. In New York City, that's essentially a teen pregnancy. Right, and so like I was trying to figure out how do I even fit this into my life when all of my friends are very much like they're going out, they're going to events, they're not home a lot. Like there's just a very different way of living life here at this age typically, right? And so I kind of had to challenge some of those patterns and say like obviously clearly like the priority here is I need to create time to be a dad and create time to put energy into fatherhood as well as my marriage to make it successful. And so that would probably be the toughest thing. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard now to not get a little jealous because there's clearly a favorite that Isaiah has, and it is not me. So I am not, I'm probably a near third after the nanny, to be honest with you. So sort of getting over that. But he's starting to recognize who I am. Give me a side eye a little less often here and there. So that's been good. But those are probably the two struggles for now.
Yeah, the ebbs and flows. It's like when I was, and that's going to continue to ebb and flow. My man, I
Great,
got, like I mentioned, I got a
great.
freshman in college and a junior in high school. My daughter, like my daughter was younger, daddy's girl, like talked all the time. But and
Yeah,
then when the teen years hit, I was like, wait a minute, I'm still kind of cool. Like when I rebound for her in basketball, I get some good time, but
amazing.
sometimes it's tough getting her to open up. And I use a curiosity framework that I learned in business. It's called TED.
Mm,
It stands for Tell Me, Explain, Describe. So I
mm,
teach that like to sales teams, but I also use it myself when I'm trying to pull information out of my daughter to get her to talk and open up. And so it's which actually I look at it as good practice. But yeah, it's like but deep down, he loves you and but that's that one smile you get or that one interaction that it's
for
like
sure.
it's kind of like in golf. You hit five out of bounds, but that one good shot it brings you back.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You know.
it's everything. 100%.
Um, okay, so living the city life with a 4 month old, you got the nanny, your career's rocking,
Yes.
a lot of exciting times. But I want to before we dive into what you're doing career wise, I want to go all the way back. What was life like
Sure.
growing up for Colin?
Yeah.
And talk about talk about the impact your parents had on you and what values were taught and most important to you.
Yeah. So I, was born and raised just outside of Atlanta. So in a, for the most part of my life, a two-parent household. My parents ended up divorcing when I was around 13 or 14, which was pretty tough. But yeah, my dad was a plumber. My mom was a school teacher. So definitely like traditional kind of those blue collar values, just like working hard, putting your mind to something and going out and doing it. My dad taught me a really lot about like communication skills because he had his own plumbing business. He did commercial and residential plumbing, and so we would be for one part of the day in like the south side of Atlanta, like helping this old woman fix her water heater, and she couldn't pay my dad, and so he would take a deposit and he'd come back later, and like seeing the warmth and the empathy in that moment, and then we'd go to Midtown Atlanta. And I'd see my dad, pitch or try to get this huge contract to do the plumbing for this enormous new mixed use complex they're building or this, housing development they're doing, and sort of seeing both sides of that and sort of the different swaths of people he interacted with in his job. I've definitely taken that forward for me professionally. And then my mom was a teacher, but she was always a student. And so I think learning from her, like I love to read. I just have a natural curiosity about things. And I know that's something that she definitely like honed to this day. She's always sending me, articles and clippings and, Bible verses and just a bunch of stuff that just, just to engage that inner student that I think is in all of us. But yeah, that's the good part. I would say that my relationship with my dad wasn't always perfect. I had an older brother, and I think like there was definitely like I always felt like they had a closer relationship than I had with my father. And I chose to do something different than what he did. Right, I wanted to go into business and like consulting and do these other things, and so there was a not a lot of professional connection there. And I just think he, kind of had some of his own struggles. And so that's actually passed when I was, 25. And so it's one thing that's like it would have been nice, I think, for him to sort of see me, get married and like start my family and all this stuff. But yeah, that was kind of what life was like growing up.
You say your dad passed when you were 25?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Yeah, my dad passed away 20 December 21st, 2021. Sorry, December 29th, 2021.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to lose a dad. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But I was actually there with my dad's last breath, which is even more surreal.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But I'm grateful I was there. Grateful I was
Yeah.
there. Challenging for
Yeah.
sure. But so your dad's a plumber, mom's a teacher. I love the theme of curiosity. It is a
Yes.
superpower that many people leave unlocked. So I hope that you carry on mom's wishes and never lose that curiosity.
Absolutely.
Um,
Never.
where do you think? So, like when I think of a plumber, I think that the snap judgment sometimes can be as like, well, blue collar, fix it. But I love to hear that. Like, I love that you said you pulled some of your like communication skills
Yeah.
and ability and the way your dad could be a chameleon almost to like different audiences, which I think in business is like really really important. Um, do you remember like how maybe how he got taught that or conversations of when that really stood out to you when it made impact?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about that a lot. I mean, my dad's story is definitely like he's learned everything he learned. He learned on the job, in the arena, if you will, on the field, just like as raw as it can get. I mean, my dad was grew up in rural Mississippi, had a high school education, then he was drafted to fight in the Vietnam War, which definitely ages him a little bit. You can kind of get an idea of he was a bit more up there in age, but like he came back and he had he was a mechanic, he had a fish truck, he got into plumbing, and so he was always doing something a little bit different. And I think it was just the constant exposure with maybe some like early gifts of kind of charisma and communication that I think have been hopefully passed down a little bit into me that have enabled me to do what I do. Um, but yeah, no, I think he was never afraid of a tough conversation, and he kind of he had that mindset of like you speak to the guy washing the floor the same you speak to the person who owns the building, right? And so
Love
he
that.
was never too big or too great, for anyone, but he also wasn't too scared or thought too low of himself to talk to everyone, right? And so I think like having that humility, confidence kind of hybrid, like I saw that really early on, and I think that definitely kind of helped me. But yeah, I don't know if I know of an exact moment in which I could say that he himself developed that. It's a good question.
Um, your family's hitting me in the heart, my man.
Okay.
Humility, curiosity are the two things I focus on a lot. The other one's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, I think, is something I teach my kids a lot about. Like, you're never too smart to ask a question. You're never too smart to ask for help. You're never too smart. I mean, you're never too. Yeah, go first. Be the first person to try the new play, to try the new golf shot, to try someone's going to mess up, and we all are, but might as well
Yeah.
go first. So back to growing up, was there a story that you can think of that taught you that you reflect on often, maybe like when you learned the power of hard work or
Mm,
treating people the right way, like your parents taught you, or being curious? Is there a story that you can maybe reflect on that stands out that you maybe will teach Isaiah?
yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I when I was younger, I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial tick, right? Like I didn't quite have a lemonade stand, but I remember distinctly when I was younger, I wanted to start like a lawn mowing business because I had a lawnmower and I had neighbors, right? So you can cut lawns. So and my very first client, if you will, my neighbor said, "Yeah, sure, you can cut my lawn. I'll give you like $20 or whatever." And I get out there and I'm cutting their lawn, and they needed the help, we'll say, and so their backyard was very much like you could almost get lost in the grass back there. And so I start cutting it, and then very like soon into this journey, like the blade like catches, right, because I hadn't raised the blades up on the lawnmower like early enough, right. And so I'm out there for probably like 10 to 20 minutes just trying to like get through it and like push and push and push and just like it'll get through, right. And then my dad gets home later and he's like, well, you didn't like, what are you doing, like you're an idiot, like just raise the blades up, clean them off, and like you'll be good to go, right. And so I think that's definitely like probably a lesson, like working smarter versus working harder, and just not taking the time to assess the situation, like what can I do differently here. um yeah, that's probably a good hard work story. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one.
How did you know you wanted to get into consulting? You're at Georgia, obviously. Yeah, you the path of
Yeah.
a teacher and a plumber, but how did you know that consulting was something you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think I mean the short answer is I kind of didn't. I just knew. I guess Ryan Serhant, a big like real estate broker here in New York City, he has this quote of like he moved to New York and he wanted to be an actor, but he ended up being like a real estate agent and he's become very successful. And he has this quote of saying that like he chose success first, career second. And so when I got to college, I knew that I wanted to be successful, whatever that meant for myself, whatever dollar amount or lifestyle I had in my head at the time, but I wasn't necessarily too picky in terms of where I was going, right? But I wanted to do something that was a good mixture of like some skills that I thought I had at the time, right? And I remember I had lied to get into this like upperclassmen networking event. I was a freshman, and I said, "Yeah, I'm a junior, I'm a senior, right?" And I grabbed a name tag before anybody could check my student ID, and I just saw this guy, this alumni, that it was a connection event between alumni and current students. And there was this one alumni in the back corner of the room, and he was dressed in a nice suit. He was very well spoken, and he was just holding court. Like he was surrounded by all these students, and they were just kind of like eating up whatever he was, putting out there. And he was telling all these stories about all these travels he was doing, and all these cool businesses he had done, and all this personal travel he could do because of the work he was doing. And I get up there and I ask some stupid question because I don't know anything. Right, my only job at that point was I was working, in the kitchen at Chick-fil-A. Right, I didn't know anything about consulting, let alone business. But I followed up with him on LinkedIn, and he had come back to the university a couple times to do speaking. We had connected, a couple moments, and I figured out, he was a consultant, and so I was like, okay, like I think I look pretty good in a suit. Like I think I can tell a story, or I can learn how to tell a story, right? I'm taking the stats and the math classes or whatever to figure out how to do the more technical parts of the job, and that was kind of it, to be honest with you. It wasn't a whole lot of thought, and then I just kind of reverse engineered the paths of some people ahead of me that had done it, um, and I kind of got my start that way. And so I think that consulting is a great career. I feel like for people like that maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do, but it was a good start for me. Got a lot of experience, but yeah, definitely didn't have a grand master plan getting into that. But it was like, hey, like I think this is a good jumping off point for what has been a pretty awesome career.
Nice. Well, I love that you're you're not afraid to say I lied to get into the thing. I love the
Yes,
honesty.
absolutely. It was a harmless lie. Didn't hurt
No
anybody.
one got hurt. No one
Yeah,
got hurt. And
exactly.
sometimes you got to take a risk, and you took a risk, and it obviously paid off for a new relationship you developed. When did you think New York was in the plans? Like, when did you and your wife say, "Let's do this"?
Yeah, so that's the timeline there is a little different. So I've known my wife for I think 7 years. I hope that's right. But when we met, we were just friends because we were dating different people. And essentially, I was in a long distance relationship with someone who was in Chicago, and she was going to move to New York after school. And she literally told me, if you don't get like a consulting job offer and move to New York City with me, like we won't be able to be together. So I was like, oh my god, like I gotta get this job. And so when I got that offer figured out, like the next month she called me. I guess she thought I wouldn't be able to do it. She said, "Hey, I'm actually like I'm going to break up with you anyways." So I ended up going to New York to follow someone else. That ended up, that relationship didn't work out. But I was still very well connected to the university, so I would come back to UGA a couple times. And my wife had done a fifth year to tack on a second bachelor's degree. We were the same age though, and so we kind of struck up, conversations, and we went on like she calls them dates. I didn't know we were dating at the time. I literally came back to the university and I thought I was recruiting her to work at, the consulting company I was at. And it's like, no, stupid. Like I want to date you, are you interested in that? And so that's kind of how our relationship started. And then she moved to New York probably a year after she graduated. So yeah, that's how that started.
And now, so you moved to New York. You're both a rock, and now Isaiah comes along.
Yes.
How hard is it, like, for maybe a younger dad that's listening, that maybe hasn't gone down the nanny path,
Hmm.
and they're maybe thinking about pros and cons, like, hey, how did you do it, and
Yeah.
maybe talk about some of the challenges or the successes that has come from having a nanny to help you out.
Yeah, I think to set some context here, like the plan was never to have a kid in New York City. We moved there for our careers, for our life enjoyment. Just being like young and in the space, like we wanted to be in that area to have that experience, right? With the end goal of being okay when we're ready, like we'll come down to Georgia, we'll buy a house, we'll have a kid, everything will be great. And then for our first year wedding anniversary, we ended up in Bali to celebrate a friend of ours who was getting married, and we ended up conceiving in Bali. And so it was like, okay, well, I guess we're having a kid in New York City. And so I guess like I think it's important to note that like it wasn't necessarily like a date on the calendar that we knew we wanted to have this experience, but obviously we knew we wanted to have children, right? And so it's definitely been. I say that to say it's definitely been a process, and like how do we make this work in the way that works best for us, not necessarily like, okay, let's just go to the plan and go to the calendar, right? Like it's been a lot of figuring it out just because she grew up, basically in rural Georgia. I grew up in the suburbs, and we've had to sort of navigate this. And so, but honestly, the first step between, I guess, like daycare versus one of us staying at home versus having a nanny is it was primarily financial, right? I mean, we're certainly a two-income household. We live in Manhattan. We don't own, right? And so, in order for us to keep up with that lifestyle, right, and just maintain it, we both definitely have to be working. And so we knew that wasn't really in the cards for us. And then maybe counterintuitively, in New York City, most of the daycares actually cost more than a nanny, and they're oftentimes just more rigid and inflexible because they've obviously got classes of 10 to 20 kids depending on where you go, right? And so we wanted something where I knew I would have a bit more flexibility because I'm now working for myself, and the nanny, or yeah, the nanny we have comes 4 days a week, and so I'm watching the kid on Fridays. Um, and so, with that in mind, we thought the nanny would be one more familiar for him because he gets to have an experience with one individual that's in our house, that's day in and day out, who we can form a bond with. And we definitely saw it as inviting this person into our family. And so we vetted or interviewed probably 10 different people, virtually and in person, just over the course of like a month to figure out who we really wanted to hold that role, and obviously who Isaiah liked. But yeah, I would say that's mainly it. Just a good mix of flexibility, cost, and just something that we felt would be best for him in terms of who he can start to bond with and have a relationship with that we also obviously trust.
Now, have you found as a dad that like knowing there's more support at home, you can kind of still focus on what you want to do and get to do and still kind of have that career mindset of growth and pushing yourself?
It's it's been, I mean, it's been a journey, I'll say. I mean, those first 3 months, when my wife was still on her maternity leave, like it was like there was no balance, like everything was blended, right? And we were just like reacting to everything, every piece of acne he got, every time he broke out, every time he coughed a little bit, right? We were just freaking out and calling the pediatrician. They were telling us to relax, like it's fine, and so um, I think now I would say, there are all these stats there around like parents becoming like more productive once they have kids. And I would say that's definitely true because I know that like when I'm at work, I really, really need to be working because when I'm home, I don't want to really be thinking about work, and I want to be as present as I possibly can for,
Good.
my family, and so I've definitely tried to adopt that mindset. Um, the phone still stays pretty close to me. I'm trying to get better at that, but yeah, I would say, especially now that I'm going into an office, my wife's at work, and we're both sort of, linking up and syncing up at the end of the day, trying to have, very hard gates on that in terms of this is family time, but, this is work time as well.
Yeah, I asked that question, Colin, because I almost ripped my microphone out of the thing. I asked that because when I was a younger dad and my son Ryder was, um, we'll call him like 18 months ish. I remember I was at a corporate job. I was on this run. I had probably more success in this job than I thought I would ever have in my life, and that was fun. But what came with that was like a lot of hours,
Yeah.
pressure. Got to be on, do all these
Yeah.
things. But the hard part was I'd get home at like 6:45. My son would be going to bed at 7. I'm like,
Yeah.
this sucks.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my boss and I said, hey, I know that you guys love the Casey that you get at work because I'm producing A, B, and C for you and you guys like those benefits. But at home, I'm miserable. She's like, why? What's going on? She's like, is your marriage okay? Mom, my marriage is great. But I'm struggling as a dad. And she's like, well, what? I go, it sucks. I get 15 minutes with him a day. She's like, well, let's fix something. I go, she goes, why don't you leave at 4? I go, Ange, that's my boss, Angela Veronica. Shout out to Ange if you're listening. I go, Ange, I can't, I can't leave at 4. because I worked in the staffing and consulting industry for 20 years. And I'm like, we're not a bank. I can't leave at 5 and we shut the bank down. It's like
Yeah.
stuff kept going. She's like, do you not trust us? I go, no, I trust you. She's like, then leave at 4. We got you.
Wow.
And she's like, if we need to reach you, there's this crazy technology called a cell phone. We'll call you
Yeah.
and get home by 5. And it's funny. I was so scared doing it. So I was like telling the story to younger dads, because sometimes we love to be the victim or hero of our own story and produce these thoughts that never become things. It just
Yeah.
creates more anxiety.
Right.
So, but once I did that, Colin, I would get, from call it 5 to 7 every night. Great dinner time, great bath time, great kid time.
Yeah.
From 7 to 7:30, 7 to 8, I'd spend time with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe till 9. And then maybe from 9 to 10, I'd clean up my email. I'd document on my CRM. I'd get the next day planned. And it was just like
Right.
robotic and rinse and repeat. But
It's
once I
awesome.
did that, my career went to the roof.
Really?
Yep.
What do you think that was? Do you think you were more effective in those hours you were there, or you
Well,
just felt better, I guess?
you said present, which is I was
Yeah.
present. I was present at work. I was
Mm-hmm.
present at home.
Yeah.
And at about age 2 or 3, I think this is also part of the story that helped. My wife decided to hang up the cleats and be a stay-at-home mom. And so that's why I asked you a question about the nanny, like knowing that there's someone that like Ryder and Riley were cared for. And like
Right.
Isaiah, the nanny, he's cared for. He's
Yeah.
good. And I don't need to worry about health because someone I trust is taking care of him. And so for me, knowing that I didn't have to worry about like, okay, if he's sick, if Riley's sick, who's going to stay home today?
Mm-hmm.
That pressure went away.
I see. Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
once I got through that, but I think just the biggest thing was being present. Like I was all in, because just like people say, I'm a great multitasker. No, you're not. I don't think anybody's a great multitasker. That
No.
means you're a half-assed listener, is what you're telling yourself.
Correct. I used to say that, and then I had a kid. And now I don't say that. So.
No, we're not. I think that the biggest gift we can give is, I always loves my Angelo quote. It's not what you said, why you said it. How do you make people feel when they leave?
That's right.
Same thing with our kids. How do we make our kids feel when we're with them? How do you make our wife feel when we're with her, our
Yeah.
partner, your workers, anybody? And so, um, I love that you're already thinking about being present as a younger dad. And in the end, no matter if you got 380,000 followers on Instagram, whether you got one,
Right.
Isaiah does not care.
Right.
And I always say I was right guy, right time, right place. I was a number one seller at a publicly traded company for 10 straight years. My kids didn't know. They could give two shits.
Yeah.
All they cared about was, hey, can we get Dairy Queen tonight? They got sale on Blizzards. Hey, can we go watch the Mariners? Hey,
That's right.
can we spend time at this? Hey, can we go to the park?
Yeah.
And so, like, part of the journey of this podcast, Colin, that is free therapy for me every time I talk to a dad, is reminding me that we're not as important as we think.
Yeah.
But the most important job we have is being a present dad and teaching through stories, lessons of where we struggled, and meeting our kids where they are, and not living vicariously through our kids, and helping them unlock their gifts, unlock what makes them special and unique. Because
Yeah.
I believe, I mean, it might be a little naive, but I believe each person has it inside of it.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's already started to, at least get more expressive, right? And I definitely see sort of parts of him emerging out of this, this baby, this thing that my wife and I created. But something you said actually, I've been thinking about stories, for the last couple months we've been talking, and I guess it really hit me, I guess, when you're talking about like where you should be spending your time and what matters and where all this kind of leads to. Because I guess, when a couple of years ago, when I lost my father and it was time to plan the service and all that stuff. I mean, I distinctly remember flying down to Georgia with my then fiance, and then my like going to his service and just seeing who was in that room. I mean, my dad probably had maybe 20 people in that room. I mean, my mother wasn't there, my sister wasn't there. I had to invite some of my close friends there just so I could have someone there besides my fiance, just to kind of have like to share that experience with and to lean on, honestly. And it just made me like, I don't know, it kind of reflected on like 74 77 years, right, had gone by, in this person's life, and based on, I guess, the decisions he made or didn't make, the impact he had or didn't have, right, kind of resulted in who was in that room. And I guess I think about that a lot as someone who's 28. Like I want my kids in that room. I want my spouse. I mean, at the very least, in that room, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think about a lot. And so I'm trying. I haven't hit the mix of presents yet. I'm still, hitting that right balance. I know it's only going to get more complex as but Isaiah gets older and he adds things onto his plate, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think about that a lot because that's the culmination. Like, there's no, game's over. You hang up your cleats for real, right? And then it's who's in that room. Uh and then after that, my dad was in the Air Force, and so you go to this, a military cemetery, and if you've ever been like to Arlington or whatever, it's like all the headstones are, they're the exact same height and they're the exact same distance from one another, so it almost looks like a grid, right? And so you go there, and obviously I don't live in Georgia, so I only go there really on holidays like Veterans Day or Memorial Day, and uh, you look out and you see like who's got flowers on top of their gravestone, who's got coins, or who's got some other cultural or familial like token or ritual, like who's showing up for you even when you're not there, to say that I'm thinking about you, I miss you, you had an impact on my life, right? And not every headstone has that, right? And so, like, I don't know, I don't mean to get us talking about death, but I guess those are like that's what I think about a lot as a dad, because I've seen that, with, I guess, the journey of my own dad, and like where that led. So
Well, that speaks to me. So unfortunately, my dad passed. Like I said, my dad passed in 2021, but we never had a funeral for him. It was right in the middle of COVID, and my dad, at age when I was 23, he went down kind of a bad stretch of health and mental health, and just so pretty much like taking care of my dad physically, emotionally, financially from 23 to 45,
oh my
in and out of
goodness.
assisted living facilities,
Yeah.
in and out of psych wards, at the heart of my career. So I got young kids.
Yeah.
Now I'm taking care of an older kid. And you think about till death do us part, that those vows, like my wife
Yeah.
she walked the walk on those vows. Um,
Wow.
and I almost got, at one point during that stretch, the most stressful time when he was really going through a tough time, I Googled caregiver burnout. It's a thing. I had 9 of the 10 symptoms. We were taking care of my dad by myself. And, but it was funny through this podcast. Shout out to Coach Tony Davis. I was talking to him about this and somehow got brought on the podcast. And he goes, he's in there. I'm like, what do you mean? I go, your dad's still in there. Go find him.
Mm.
And it hit me right in the face and the heart, and like, just like, oh, gut punch. And
Yeah.
I remember, like, because COVID was almost like a excuse, like I could like take a break, like, oh, I can't go see him
Yeah.
because they won't let me in,
Right.
if I'm being honest. And then, but the last 6 weeks of his life, I saw him every day. It
Wow.
was awesome. And
Yeah.
and my mindset switched from I don't have to see him, I get to see him.
Yes.
And
That's huge.
and it was great. Like my son saw him, and his dementia almost kind of went away at the end of his life,
Yeah.
where he thought Ryder was me for a little bit, but
Mm.
he was just kind of there. We would just do these like funny stories. He couldn't read, but I would like, I mean, he couldn't hear, but he
Okay.
could read a note on a phone. So I would like one time, like, I'm not like the most, I'd say, religious person from a church perspective, but I'm very spiritual. I mean, I look at Bible
Yeah.
scripture every morning. I do gratitude work. I believe
Yeah.
in higher power. I just, and so I remember I wrote down on my phone, it says, God loves you. And I turned it and faced it at him. And then at one point I
Wow.
said, are you ready to go meet God? And he looks at me, he goes, not yet, but close. It's eerie,
Wow.
dude. Eerie.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so, and sometimes I fought like, I felt guilty at first. Like, God, I can't, we didn't have a funeral for my dad. Well, my dad lost a ton of friends because he was in assisted living facility for like 10 years.
Yeah.
No offense to my sis, she wasn't really there.
Yeah.
My mom, they got divorced, so she wasn't there.
Yeah.
Couple of brothers, my cousin of all things, she was fantastic, helped. But this journey though was challenging. But so like he was cremated and he wanted to have his ashes, so we've done half of them on one spot. I'm still waiting to do the other half. But season 3, when he passed, every episode was dedicated to him. And so that was
That's
like
awesome.
peace for me. That was his funeral, his 52-week funeral,
Yes. 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 Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I think it's good as you're thinking about that as a young dad, and I hope there's younger dads who are listening that be like, start thinking about these things. Don't stress yourself out, but get them in your subconscious. And
Yeah. It's very easy to get caught up in the day of, okay, do you, and especially now when he's so dependent on the actions of me and my wife. It's like, is his diaper changed? Or his clothes clean? Oh, we spit up on that. Oh, we got to start solid foods. Do we have sweet potatoes? It's like you can get caught up in all the things you're doing. But yeah, I think, like, for me, like, I'm constantly thinking about, like, okay, like, what does this look like 10, 20, 30 years out? Because I guess I've, like, you've seen, because of the age of my dad and just some other family experiences I've been able to observe, like, you can tell where certain decisions lead, right? And you want to make sure you're making or doing your best, to make, like, the right ones, I guess.
yeah. As you and your wife think about core values in your home that are going to be most impactful for Isaiah,
Yeah.
um, tell me a couple that come to mind on the heart,
Yeah.
and tell me why.
Yeah, no, this is something actually we've made a plan to think about a lot, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like, I think of a family in a lot of ways. Like, I would love us to have. We need to do this work. We're actually planning to do it, and then we got pregnant. But, like, I want to have, like, a crest. I want to have a mission statement. I want to have values. I want to have things I can point to in my life and in my family and in our household. Where it's like, if you're not living up to these things, we need to have a serious conversation, because this is what we believe in. And so I guess some of those values, if I can remember them, are, I think, uh, I think trust and honesty are kind of like, they're kind of sisters, and they kind of go hand in hand, because I think you definitely need one to have the other. And I think that's something where, it's always going to be important for Isaiah to observe my wife and I being honest with each other, but also to kind of demand, right? Ask that of him, because that's the standard we hold in our house. So that's definitely one of them. Because I see that. I don't know. It's just, I can never imagine a world in which I'm untruthful or, like, trying to hide things from my wife, and so I definitely don't want to get into a point where, I've got secrets that me and Isaiah are keeping from her, that me and her are keeping from him. It's like, I don't want to live in that kind of household. Um, I think there's definitely an element of, I don't know whether it's like appreciation or humility or, like, humbleness, but just the understanding that, like, the odds are the life that Isaiah will live will be so much more beautiful, great, and abundant than the lives that I had or my wife had. Right? We don't come from terribly depressed economic situations, but it's like, odds are, I'm doing pretty well. Kaylee's doing pretty well. I think Isaiah is going to make it out all right, material wise. And so I think it's important for us to do the work or have the experiences, just so he is appreciative of that, and also has some desire or just some appreciation to, like, contribute in some way, right? And so what does that look like? I think, whenever I would act out, my dad would, like, he would, like, this just sounds terrible, but, like, he would drive me intentionally through, like, some of the rougher parts of town, like, when I was younger, just to get an understanding of, like, this is, the environment that your mother came up from. My mom was raised; she was the youngest of 12, raised in Atlanta, one of the first to get into the integrated schools. The kids used to throw, like, black erasers at her head. Like, she was dealing with a lot, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and so, like, he would sort of put that up in front of my face, right? And so, like, it's not the suburbs, like, this is what your life could be. And I think, there are ways to do that with Isaiah as well, just to make him appreciative of, the life that, his parents and his community have been able to provide for him. Um, and I just think a level kind of on that note is, like, resourcefulness. I think there's a key component of, like I want to have resilient kids with Isaiah, and, future kids that my wife and I plan to have, just so they know that, like, mom and dad may not have all the answers to all your questions, right? But it's like, you can, like, getting the figure it out muscle kind of well trained. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here, but it's like that level of resilience. And even if you don't know how, you can at least figure out how to know how, right? And so I think that's also, for me, like, those are probably, like, the top three that I'd like to imbue, in him as he gets a little older. But now we're working on solids, so once we get solid food down, we'll get to some of those other ones.
Well, a couple of things you said that I want to hit on. One, uh, getting your kids to help figure things out. The hardest part about that, and I was guilty of this, and I see parents doing it, is we do too much for our kids
Yeah.
because you want to fix it, you want to help them, you want to like prevent. We don't want to see them cry. And that's why I think about the COVID journey was a blessing for us because we had
Hmm.
you couldn't do anything. I wasn't and so like it slowed me down. I'm like, holy shit, I'm my kid can make his own meals. I'm not saying he
Yeah.
needs to go out and freaking cook a 5-star meal by himself, but like
Sure.
the dude can put his own Eggos in. He should know how to do an egg. He should be able to learn how to do his own laundry.
Yeah.
Like, and so we use that time to like,
That's
hey, you need
awesome.
this done. We taught him. And so there's a
Yeah.
great book guy interviewed named Swen Nader.
Okay.
This is like in season 1 or 2. And he wrote a book called You Have Not Taught Until They Have Learned.
Ooh,
It is powerful. It is a
I
really
love
good
that.
book. And this dude played basketball for the great John Wooden.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
great story. Played with Bill Walton. Rest in peace, Bill. And Yeah, so it's like that's a thing that's really really hard to do. But you think about like the person that shaped Colin is probably
Hmm.
the tough times, the adversity you went through.
Yeah.
The failure you had, not like how
Absolutely.
great Colin was. It's like the challenges you had. And so like we have as parents, it's our job to let our kids struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
It's gonna
it's
hearing you
hard.
say that. It's like, why would I do that? But like, yeah. Okay. That's. I get you.
It's hard too.
Yeah.
Another thing he said I'd love to talk on because I think when we first met, I told you we have a shared connection in my man Dale Favors,
Yes.
and Dale impacted me, and still impacts me. And I don't talk to him. I don't get to talk to him often, but when I do, I pick up right where I left off.
Hmm.
And I just thinking about like the word perspective, which Dale taught me so much about. We talked about diversity a ton as dads. And I think I shared with you before. I interviewed Dale at the height of Black Lives Matter movement, as a height of social
Yeah.
unrest.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to dive in and just try to make an impact. I'm never going to solve racism, but if I can put a dent in it and be a little bit more curious, have a little bit more empathy.
Yeah.
Like my mom didn't grow up in with getting racist thrown at her head.
Yeah.
My mom didn't have integrated schools. Like,
Yeah.
I mean that they there wasn't like blacks in here and whites here. Like
Sure.
the fact, I mean, I'll never know what that feels like.
Right.
And so I think when we slow down as dads, whether we're having these conversations with your friends or family, like be a little curious, have a little empathy about what other people's journeys have been, because that's how that's our perspectives create our habits, our outcome, our mindset. And if you're not open minded to try new things or listen to new things, like, and Dale did so much of that for me.
Yeah. It's something. Obviously, he's 4 months. Like we haven't had an experience on it, but I guess it's. Um, my wife is Caucasian, so we have a mixed race son, and it's I guess I haven't thought about this literally until this conversation. So you're about to get some raw and unfiltered stuff. But like,
Love
I
it.
guess like, I haven't really considered the fact of like, how could I ever explain to him that because of like the color of your grandmother's skin, they threw like shoe polish and black like chalkboard erasers at her when he is literally the product of the union of these, two, racial identities, right? Um, that's going to be strange, right? And I feel like it's going to be hard for him to like, because he's going to love his dad. Hopefully, he's going to love his mom. Hopefully, right? And so he's going to see what that love can do. But I guess that's hokey. But like maybe that therein lies the answer. But like yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. It's another thing that I guess in some ways would be nice about raising him for part of his life in an environment like New York City that just has less tension. There's certainly still, feelings, ideals, communities right here that aren't, it's not so black and white that, the New York is not fixed racism either, but I think it's like there's certainly just more flavors here that I feel like would be good to surround him with for a period of his life. But yeah, that's it's gonna be tough because I would say on both sides, just getting, engaged, married, pregnant, having the kid. I mean, in my community and in my wife's community, I mean, there are definitely people with opinions about that. So yeah, it's something we've already had to navigate as in our marriage, but definitely as he gets older, it'll be something we'll have to navigate in our family.
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing is I love bringing this up and talking about topics that, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have never wanted to talk about race with people. Not
Hmm.
because I didn't, just because wasn't natural.
Right.
And
Yeah.
now I look for those opportunities to do so because I think it's growth. And
Yeah.
I think it's a great lesson we can, like I teach my kids is, um, everybody comes from different backgrounds. And the more that you can learn about people and ask questions, that's how I think relationships are formed. Um, and, I think about, Dale influenced me to interview. He didn't ask me to do it, just by meeting him. I interviewed 5 of my teammates in college,
Yeah.
from Hawaiian to Samoan to African American. And I just, part of the interview was just like, man, hey, I'm sorry I didn't get to know you better in college. And you were my
Yeah.
teammate in the locker room and we were boys, but I never asked you, like, hey, what was life like growing up for you? How are your parents?
Yeah.
Did you ever deal with, racism when you're growing up? Like, never asked them those questions. And I'm like, if they're
Yeah.
my friend, why wouldn't I do that? And so, like, Dale has given me the strength to, like, think about that. And I've shared those stories with my kids. And actually, when I interviewed Dale, I had my kids watch.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. I
I
had my
can.
mom watch, my stepdad, former
Yeah.
teammates. So I think if you don't know who Dale Favors is, everybody, reach out to him because he is the man, and I love the guy. So
Absolutely. Even
anyway,
even in my own life, I mean, I wasn't, obviously, I wasn't raised during the height of civil rights, right? But like, I distinctly remember even in high school, I had a crush on this girl who was Korean, and I asked her out. We both used to volunteer at this elementary school locally, and so I had some of the elementary school kids line up with poster board around the corner of the hallway and said, "Will you go to prom with?" And then I was holding the sign that said "me," right, with some flowers and chocolates. Early romantic gesture there. She was excited. We were excited. Posted it on Facebook at the time, um, and literally that was Friday. And on Sunday, she calls me crying, saying that someone in her family that she was really close to saw the photos up on Facebook, and they literally said, you can't go to prom with this person." We would, and they were literally. Now I'm just talking too much, but like they were literally talking about taking away some of the support that they had laid out for her to go to college if she was going to go to prom with me. Mind you, Casey, I was prom king. I was captain of the track team. I graduated most likely to succeed with honors, partial scholarship to go to the University of Georgia, right? And so it's like, I've got those experiences. And so, it's an interesting world we live in, I guess.
was it all because
We'll all
color
say.
your skin?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It
Wow.
was it was the look of it. It was the fact that we posted that photo of us on social media where members of her family could see it and sort of have this association, um, that sort of caused that to happen. But yeah, that was kind of an early experience for me. I was like, wow, this is not all sunshine and rainbows. So
See, that's again, it's perspective. And I think about the word privilege. Like, I've never had to experience that. Dale taught me that too. Um, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I think about the word privilege of
yeah.
teaching, like, my kids, when I learned about, because I used to be one of these white people. Throw myself under the bus here.
I
Well,
love that. That's the best start of a sentence I think I've ever heard, Casey. I
yeah,
love that.
I was
Okay.
one of these white people that when I heard the word privilege, I was like, I work my ass off. I'm not privileged. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I didn't get it, Colin. I
Yeah.
didn't get it. And so, like, Dale helped me understand. Like, he's like, Case, when's the last time you've been to a restaurant where you're the only white people there? I'm like, oh, that's never happened. That's privilege. When's the last time you walk down the street and you see someone coming at you and they move their purse from the left shoulder to the right shoulder? When's the last
Yeah.
time when Ryder learned how to drive, you said, hey, bud, 10 and 2. If you get pulled over, 10 and 2, do not leave your hands from the steering wheel.
Absolutely.
I never had to do that.
Yeah.
And so now I don't want to feel guilty for it, but
Sure.
it's perspective, it's empathy, it's curiosity, it's learning about these types of things. Because I think we can put our guard down and talk about this stuff. I think that's how relationships get stronger. And that's why I don't mean this to be like a Dale love fest, but it's turning into one. you know?
He's a great guy.
But like, these are things that I think we as dads can slow down to, like, make time to talk to our kids about.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Um, as we think about wrapping up before we get into career Colin, which you learn all about that, like, if you had to summarize kind of what we've talked about, which has been everything all over the board. A lot of good, important topics. I think themes that dads can take from our conversation today to, like what I always say, be that ultimate quarterback or leader of their home. Tell me a couple of key things that you feel we've discussed that dads can take to implement in their own lives.
Yeah, I guess the first one is one that I've had to learn that hopefully I've spoken to throughout our conversation. But like you don't have to know all the answers to lead. You just have to be committed to finding them, right? That's something that I like. That was an early lesson I had because to be honest with you, used to hide behind the fact that, oh, like I don't think I had a model dad in my household, or I'm, doing this at 27 in New York City. Like I'm not supposed to, I don't have to know all these things, right? But I think one thing I've learned is that you can assume that role. And again, it's that figure it out muscle, right? It's like if you're committed to playing the part and being the best you can be in that role, you will sort of figure it out. So that's something I've had to learn, definitely as a new dad. I've definitely reflected a lot on the 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 result and where certain decisions can lead, and where the just the impact on a father, good, bad, or indifferent, is something that I think about a lot. And just I guess like the stuff we were recently talking about around like the you know my family, nor Kaylee's family can prepare the two of us for the conversations that we're going to have and the journey we're going to have to walk as a family, just being mixed race in America, right? So that will be a net new experience for everyone. And so that's the thing of like, but even in your life, I can imagine there are situations that have come up, right? Where like there is no playbook, right? And you can't just refer to, your Uncle Dave or your friend Jimmy, like you've got to figure it out. And so I think that's another one too, where I'm like, even the people that maybe had the model parent in the home or the model experience in the home, you're going to walk into an experience in your life that's going to be new, and you're going to have to know how to react, or at least how to start to figure out like what's going on there. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. That's gold, man. Hopefully everybody's taking notes. I got a page of notes here in front of me. Um, so you got some folks on Instagram that listen to you,
Yes. Just a
and
couple.
you're doing some influencer work. Your tag is career colon. Talk
Yes.
about where did this passion come from, and what are you looking to help influence out there?
Yeah. So I would say, to set some context, I throughout like college, high school, early career, I think in my group of friends, I was always kind of the career guy. When someone had a tough interview coming up, or when someone didn't know what to wear into the office, or when someone had a tough conversation with their boss that they didn't necessarily know how to move forward with, I was always getting that call or that text. And so I was sort of in my group of friends, the person or the resource that people would come to. And so I think, and then on my own side, like I consider myself and I call myself a first generation professional in corporate, right? I was in situations that my parents were not professionally. And so whether that was sitting down with, a client at a fancy dinner, whether that was just going through an interview process, whether that was managing a team for the first time in an office type of environment, like definitely school of hard knocks for all of those lessons. And so, like you, COVID was in some ways a great experience for me because it took out a lot of noise in my life, and I was sort of able to figure out, okay, like what do I want to do? How do I want to leave an impact on the world? And so I just started putting out videos on TikTok, just kind of as a creative outlet, of sorts. And through no really means of my own, started to grow a real audience there. And so that's now expanded into like Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other things. It's landed me speaking opportunities and consulting opportunities. And so it's definitely been an organic journey. I didn't sort of set out to be an influencer one day, but at some point it became just a very good opportunity that I'm like, I would kind of be uh, not doing right by my family and future me if I didn't sort of see what I could do if I sort of took the 50, 60 plus hours I was putting into my 9 to 5 and put that in here instead. And so I've been doing that for the last couple of months, and the results have been extraordinary, just to put it, shortly. And so like I'm really, really excited to do that. And sort of my goal is kind of to equip and inspire. And so what that means is, I'm not, I've never been a CEO. I've never led a large team, right? I've never started a business that had employees, right? But I see myself as someone who can teach the people that follow me something as I'm learning it. And so I'm more so a guide versus a guru. And so I'm kind of in the seat with my audience. And I feel like that level of relatability and closeness to their actual lived experience is what's allowed me to grow a following, even though I'm not, on the Mount Rushmore of, professional white collar work, right? I think I'm a very relatable person in that space, and I've got a unique journey, right? In terms of how I got into this professional zone that I was in terms of how I grew up, a lot of people aren't on social media with those experiences, or at least they're not sharing them. And so I feel like that uniqueness in my space is good too. So that's kind of the goal there and how that came to be.
Love it. Um, if someone's like, yeah, I want to follow you, like what would be like the one or two things that you've heard from your followers that says, man, Colin, I'm so glad you did this video on X because it really helped me out.
Yeah, so I've got a couple series that I've done that have been really helpful. I've got one called kind of like white collar versus blue collar, and so I talk about just how different economic situations when you're growing up can sort of frame how you approach work in general, in terms of how you use leverage, how you manage teams, how you think about hard work, right? The concept of networking, right? Like there's growing up in my household, right? There was the old adages of just put your head down, get the work done. Don't spend time talking to people. Just like do your work, and like the work will shine through. In a lot of cases, especially in large organizations, that's not really true. And you've got to be good at what you do, but you've also got to know how to advocate for yourself, or how to get on high performing teams, or how to align yourself with people in your organization that are going somewhere. And that's not intuitive for a lot of people, especially if you come from a situation where I came from. So that's the kind of stuff where I can talk about. I've also got this fun series where I just compare salaries. And so it's like, you may be a CPA in Indiana making 90,000. Well, guess what? A plumber in Brooklyn makes that too, right? Probably a little more, And so it's like, those are always fun because I feel like, people sometimes can chase these white collar careers because they feel like it's the only way to make a big financial difference in their family, which, for me, that was the case, but it's like for everyone else, that may not be where your area or zone of genius is, right? And so maybe it is chasing a path as an electrician or as a plumber or as some of these skilled trades that we need anyways, and that are in short supply almost everywhere in the country, right? And so like stuff like that is good, and I always get people in the comments sort of fighting for their professional choice that they've made, which is always fun. So
Very cool. Well, and it's at Career Colon. They have
that's
that right.
right. Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the places.
Awesome. We will make sure this is tagged well in the show notes. We'll make sure hopefully you get some
Great.
more followers from our conversation today.
Absolutely. And I'm going to follow
Um,
you on Snapchat.
hey, do it. I'll send you my. We'll get a streak going.
Yeah, that's
Let's
right.
get a streak and we'll play some filters.
Yeah.
All right, it's now time to go on what I call the lightning round, where
Okay.
I show you the negative hits of taking too many hits in college, not bong hits, but football hits.
Okay.
Your job is to answer these questions as quickly as you can.
Okay.
My job is to try to get a giggle out of you.
Okay.
I have not prepared any of these things. This is just going to show you what why a quarterback has a screw loose. Are
Oh,
you
this will
ready?
be fun. I'm born ready. Yeah. Let's go.
Okay. Um, when true or false? When you left the University of Georgia, you went to the Olympics and won the 100-meter dash.
That is false.
Okay. True or false? You once were the Bulldog mascot at a football game.
That is also false.
Okay. If I was to come to your house tonight with the nanny, with Kaylee, with Isaiah, what would we have for dinner?
Uh, well, the nanny would go home and have her own dinner, and we would, and we would probably do like a steak stir fry. I like little meals you can put together, a couple of ingredients, not a lot of prep. We've got a Manhattan kitchen, Casey, so lower your expectations, but we can get some
Okay.
steak strips and some frozen veggies. We'll put on the grill for you.
That sounds good. I'm getting a little hungry here early on a Thursday morning. Um, Tell me your favorite movie of all time.
Of all time. Um, ooh. Okay, so the two that came to mind are I love The Incredibles. I feel like it's just such a well capsuled movie, and it's got a real deep family story in there too. In terms of the journey of all those characters, really, I think it's really well done. And it's also really visual. I saw it a lot when I was a kid, um, and I really like what's the football movie with Denzel Washington? He's got the high school team. Remember the Titans.
Titans.
I
There you go.
love that movie. Which, fun fact, that was filmed at my high school, Sprayberry High School in Marietta, Georgia. So that was a fun fact. The
Really?
field they play on, yeah, it's that field. And I
Wow.
just, yeah, just a good sports movie. Denzel's amazing, and like just the seeing the struggles that some of those players go through. And it's a good time capsule. I mean, to be honest with you, like my watching that with someone like my mom, I mean, she can relate to a lot of the tension of that movie. So yeah, two of my favorites.
Wow. Tell me the last book you read.
The last book I read was The Algebra of Wealth by Scott Galloway. So again, definitely personal finance and investing is another item on the self education list for me, and so I'm always trying to absorb new knowledge and set my family hopefully up for success there.
There we go. If you were
Yeah.
to go on vacation right now, just you and Kaylee, sorry, Isaiah, you're staying home with the nanny. Tell me where we're going.
Uh, we would go to Greece because we were going to go there this year, but then we went to Bali last year and conceived a wonderful child. So that trip was postponed.
There we go. Greece
Yeah,
would be fun. That's on the list. That'd be cool to get back there.
yeah.
Okay. If there was to be a book written about your life, tell me the title.
Well, some news for you, Casey, has actually just recently signed a book deal, so I've got that in the works.
Let's
And
go.
we don't have a title yet, but I would love to probably title it like First Gen Professional, just based off of the brand that I'm sort of building on social media. Or I love this idea of kind of tongue in cheek calling it like Most Likely to Succeed, since it's the award I won in high school, but it's like I've defied a lot of things to get that title and also what I've done since. So it's kind of like a flipping of it. But I don't know. I'm kind of between those two titles. So either First Gen Professional or Most Likely to Succeed.
Okay. So whatever title you choose, just note that it's selling out of every bookstore, every
Amazing.
airport, every Barnes and
Yes.
Noble. No one, we can't keep this book on the shelves. And now, believe it or not, Colin, Netflix and Hulu and Apple
Amazing.
TV they're fighting for this book to get the
Love
script
it.
to make a movie. And now you are the casting director. I need to know who's going to star the career Colin in this critically acclaimed hit new movie.
Oh, I love this. Okay, well, first let's manifest this conversation. I want to be able to come back to this in 2 to 5 years and say,
Why not?
Casey said it. But I've been told in some of my videos that I look like this guy who's on. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of Industry. It's a show on HBO about these young like investment bankers in London, and there's this guy named Augustus, I think, that plays a character named Gus. So he's
Okay.
a really good African American actor. He has a British accent, so we'd had to tamper that down a little bit, do a little Tom Holland, just to make that uh, you know non-British. But yeah, I'd probably choose that guy.
There you go. I love
Yeah,
the word manifest. Thoughts become things, Colin, and you got to
that's
put it
right.
out there. And I'm a big
Yeah,
visualization guy. So, okay. And then last question. Tell me two words that would describe Kaylee.
kind and patient.
Boom. Lightning round's over. We both giggled. You made it through unscathed. It's been so fun talking to you. Hard to believe how fast
Likewise,
the hour went by. Again,
I know.
no script, just a little curiosity, a little listening. And everybody at home, dads, you don't need a microphone and a podcast to have conversations like these. What you need is a little effort, little curiosity, and just watch what happens. Watch what happens to the people you meet, you learn from.
Yeah,
And if there's something that you took from our conversation today, go teach your kids. Go tell a story. Go talk about maybe where you weren't the best, and create that level of vulnerability with your children. That perfect does not exist, but if we can all learn and grow together, we're going to create a better place to live. We're going to create a better, stronger huddle in our family, and you're going to continue to improve those leadership skills. I want to thank our sponsors for continuing supporting us. And if this episode has impacted you, please text it and share it with a friend. That would be the biggest gift. Colin, thank you so much, brother. It's great spending time with you, and I can't wait to meet you in person soon.
likewise. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
you bet.